Hello, Oscar.
Oh, hello. Didn't see you there.
Okay. We just got done talking about Star Wars, so we're here to talk about Star Wars.
Yes, it's a completely different time we're talking about Star Wars. You can tell because...
You now have a book.
Yes, I have it here.
Do not show it. I will kill you.
Well, today we are going to talk about two Star Wars games again. And the two games this time, 100% correct, with no doubt.
We will have cut that out. They won't know that
I'm the one doing the cutting, so we'll see what's going to be there.
I'm doing the pre-cutting, so let's not get ahead of ourselves, or I'll cut you out of the episode entirely.
I'll cut right to the chase and say that the games today are the PS2 version of Star Wars: The Revenge of the Sith.
Sorry, I have to stop you there.
The real title.
I have made a staggering discovery here.
Okay.
It is not called Star Wars: Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. It's called Star Wars: Episode 3 - Revenge of the Sith.
Color me amazed.
I have dashed your expectations.
Yes, I am dashed. The other game is a Game Boy Advance game called Star Wars: Apprentice of the Force.
Yes.
Right? Wrong.
A game that is noteworthy.
Yes, it's you have experienced parts of this game already.
Yes.
If you are watching this.
For it is the progenitor of the Cantina theme in which we have based our opening theme.
Yes, it's from this game. We are finally here.
We have already talked about an Episode 3 game before, a game that did not fare extremely well. This time, I feel way less sure about what game will come out on top. But we'll introduce the games first. I'll do Revenge here. So we talked about the Game Boy version of Revenge of the Sith, which is a Mega Man-esque / beat-em-up brawler looking ass game which has like some elements of dueling in it, but it's kind of boring. I think, in sort of the worst way, the GBA version. I can't remember what we said about it. I
don't remember anything about the GBA version.
Very sort of safe and boring. And you could argue that for the Revenge of the Sith for PS2. That game is it's in the mold of the Lord of the Rings.
Like the PS2,
action games.
PS2 and
exactly.
Xbox, whatever.
Those games hit. Those games were sort of actually cool. And they sold a bunch. I don't think that style of game is necessarily that hard to make, so every studio just pivoted into making exactly that. So there are a bunch of Star Wars games that are just movie tie-ins that is that. And this game is that. It's basically just that. But it has some quirks. Which I'm sure we'll get into. But I'll say, just sort of to put it out there, that I think that Star Wars: Episode 3 - Revenge of the Sith is a fucking comedy game. It is. It has value.
It has some moments in it.
Yes,
to be sure.
Why don't you introduce Apprentice of the Force, and we'll just lay these out, because I feel like it is way less certain which game will be.
Yes. Star Wars: Apprentice of the Force is a game for the Game Boy Advance where you play like the thing with the game is that you're playing through all of the original trilogy movies.
As Luke.
Yeah, as Luke. So it's like you start in wherever Luke starts, on Tatooine, in Mos Eisley or whatever, and then it proceeds through Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, blah blah blah, Star Wars. What you do in the game is, it's a side-scroller platformer. You walk around, shoot and chop down bad guys, press button, lift goes up, move on to next level, etc. The thing with the game that stands out is two things to me. Number one, it has certain graphical style, because the sprites are all rotoscoped.
Yes.
It has a heavy rotoscope look to it. which I think looks pretty weird.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel like, and this is gonna sound really weird, but like, it doesn't feel like it's a rotoscoped world that the sprites are in. It's just the sprites that are rotoscoped, and everything else looks, normal.
It's really interesting because the game looks sort of, to me, it almost looks like someone made like a Commodore 64 game for the GBA or something like that. Like there's sort of this like very anachronistic, this was made either by Polish people or one British guy in the 80s energy to it.
The other thing that stands out is that it's somewhat similar to, Super Star Wars. It's completely insane, like what they have put in this game that's supposed to be Star Wars. Or like take place in the Star Wars setting, because you have Luke in this game, and he's basically like an anime ninja in this game, because he like the way he moves, the way he does everything, like you have this command dash or whatever in the game, which is like Luke gets a DBC energy aura and like across the screen at like lightning speeds. And it's like, I remember when Luke did that, in the movies and stuff. And I mean, it's a game. It's fine. The entirety of Super Star Wars is, what the hell, and so on. But it feels really like thematically, it clashes so hard. I feel like with what it's supposed to depict. And
I think for me, we've talked about this before. Something that I think specifically games has done for Star Wars as a setting, which kind of sucks, is that the idea of force jump and force speed, I don't know, they don't work. Like, they don't work when you think about them at all. It just sucks. Because technically Luke force jumps in the original trilogy. That happens. He does a big jump. But the idea that these things are sort of like codified abilities, and speed is just fucked. Because it either allows the character to be sort of visually the Flash, which does sort of technically also happen in episode 1, or you have to make it so they all have sort of bullet time reactions, and I think neither of those sort of work. They only work if it's like you see it happen once and you go like, what? Wow, the Jedi sure are mystical.
When it comes to force speed, also like within the concept of like, movie Star Wars and stuff, I really dislike the force speed, in episode 1, where they're like away and then it's never touched upon again.
Yeah, why exactly. Why the fuck don't you do that in the deflector tunnel? Like, are you an idiot?
And like if you take the other version, as you say, that would be like, oh, everything's moving in bullet time. The force is about clairvoyance, it's about seeing things before they happen and all that sort of thing. So, when a Jedi is blocking blaster bolts, it's because the force is telling them where to block. Exactly. It's not because they have super reactions. They just, I just do this and it works out. That's what blocking blaster bolts is. And so it feels so stupid, because like, what would force speed be? But yet in every video game, here comes force speed. Let's go fast all the time. And it's bad. But when it comes to the abilities in the game Apprentice of the Force, there is a insane ability in the game. You jump and you do a slash move in the air or whatever with your lightsaber, because obviously you get access to the lightsaber eventually. And this just, demolishes everything in the game.
Yeah, there's no thought to balance on what saber attacks do what sort of damage. So you have combos.
Yes, there are a lot of attacks, animated attacks for the lightsaber and stuff like that. There's no reason to use any of them.
Yeah, you have a full screen 360 jump slash, which has no landing recovery, that you can just mash.
I just remember that you have time stop in this game as well. Like straight up yo-yos, time stop. Luke does a pose and just freezes everything on the screen.
It sort of alternates between being Super Star Wars-esque, walk around the levels, jump around, find the exit, and then it sort of, at times, it just like locks you in and it just spawns a bunch of enemies.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Yeah, in which case, having the jump slash is very good, because you can just jump back and forth and just kill everything. But then the game actually does have some other sections. It has the speeder section, it has the Death Star section, which I'm sure we'll get to.
What also breaks up the combat now and then is that you have sections that are like, for some reason in every Star Wars game, almost every Star Wars game, probably every Star Wars game, you need to have sections that are here's a droid. Bring a droid to thing where it can either open door or stand on platform. Send the droid up. You go here. Droid do this. Escort the droid to do this and that. I don't want to lead droids around anymore. I don't want to go places with droids. Leave the droid at home.
It's really funny to me to consider the fact that a kid with the GBA, they go like, I want the Star Wars game. And they could have gotten Revenge of the Sith, which, regardless of that game's quality, it's a very mediocre game, I think. Like, it's super average. That at least, like, looks like something.
Yeah.
And as I said in the review, when we talked about it, I'm 100% sure that's some kid's favorite game. This game, that must have been a gray-ass day.
Yeah.
Getting Apprentice of the Force.
Yeah, because, I mean, I remember, similarly to the GBA Revenge of the Sith game, we did the thing where, you know, make Warcraft 2 voice to narrate everything.
I don't know if we did.
I did the Warcraft 2 voice to make the game bearable. When I think about that now, it's funny because you never really see anyone's like face in this game. Everyone is this rotoscoped blob. And then when there's dialogue, it just says, you know, like Obi-Wan or Luke. And you don't never ever really see anyone. So it's a lot, it's kind of, you know, it's like weird. It's like liminal.
Yeah, it's a really weird game.
Yeah.
It almost feels kind of like AI generated, to be honest.
Like, I had never heard of this game before we played it.
Well, took you long enough.
What was that?
I was always here. You just were not ready to see.
Speaking of AI generated, or I shouldn't say that. I was gonna make an AI joke about the voice work in Revenge of the Sith for PS2, which I think would be an affront to the voice actors. That game, just like the Lord of the Rings games, comes from an era where I guess you wanted a bunch of voice work in your game, but you didn't want to hire the people. You couldn't hire Ewan McGregor, which makes sense.
Yeah.
He probably takes a sort of hefty sum.
Negotiations were short.
But there are several things which is amazing about the voice work in Revenge of the Sith. Primarily, I'll say it's the actual voices. No one sounds like they ought to. They all sound like a comedian making an impression of the characters. And there is a bunch of voice work. Especially Anakin sounds like he sounds like they gave him like 2 shots of horse tranquilizer before he hit the recording booth.
I will bring the security to my new empire. You've turned it against me. You've done that yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And the Ewan McGregor is like, I don't know, it's like 40 years older. So that's already great.
Yeah.
But then the voice lines, because technically a bunch of the voice lines are just straight up, okay, just do the movie. We have the movie, do the movie lines. Which is all well and good. It's already funny, as is. But not only do they have a bunch of new voice lines, which are written by an idiot. So Count Dooku in this game is basically Virgil from Devil May Cry. He has a bunch of like pathetic
scum.
And like scum. You're gonna have to be more skilled than that if you want to take me on. A bunch of that, which is fucking rad. Like alternate universe drugged Dooku who is Virgil.
Now you're making me want to play like a Devil May Cry game where it's just Count Dooku saying stuff like foolishness, Anakin, foolishness.
Well, that is this game. You do kill him, which kind of sucks. But not only is there that, and that goes for every character in the game. They just have a bunch of extra voice line because you have to run through 400 extra corridors and kill droids and Geonosian insects. But like as a cherry on top, the game has like the fact that they are in a game is sort of diegetically in the voice work. You'll have Ewan McGregor go like, or well, not Ewan McGregor, not Ewan McGregor will like you boot the game up, the first 4 seconds he'll go like, Anakin, you must try to use the light and heavy attacks. Like it's amazing.
I hate this kind of thing in games. We're not gonna start talking about Coder again.
No.
But KOTOR has the same thing, where it's like, listen, in order to open doors, Commander, try pressing the action button.
Yeah.
And then it's like this Metal Gear Solid ass, get it out of here.
Yeah, it does technically kind of suck. But in this instance, it makes the game 100 times better. Basically, the game is sort of horridly average and kind of bad because it's not a good beat 'em up. It peaks the first 4 seconds because killing the battle droids is sort of like, oh, the lightsaber works like a lightsaber. And then it just becomes like everything. You have to hit them 54,000 times.
And it becomes video games.
Yeah, it becomes the beat stick ass shit game. But it's not worse than any of the other equal shitty games. It's not technical. Like, people will say The Force Unleashed is better than this, but it's the same fucking experience. It doesn't really matter. But if you sort of factor in the voice work and the cutscenes, I think it becomes an experience that is way less bad than a lot of Star Wars stuff. And it's only like 3 hours long.
According to in our interests, it's okay because it was short.
Yeah, it's good that it's short.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
It also has a great alternate ending.
It does. I'm not sure what to say about it. Like, it's something that you kind of need to see for yourself.
You need to experience it.
Yeah.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground! You underestimate the power of the dark side. Excellent work, my apprentice. No, the galaxy belongs to me.
Imagine if that's the way things turned out. That would have been a doozy, as they say in Star Wars.
Yeah, my favorite part about the alternate ending is the fact that the clone troopers, if you watch the alternate ending with spoilers, it has Anakin wins versus Obi-Wan, and they do a really shit job of it because it's just like, I have the high ground, and then he just jumps over him and he says like, it doesn't matter, and kills him.
When you imagine like there's an alternate ending where Anakin wins, you're thinking like, oh, it's gonna turn out like this. But then you're waiting for the moment where you think it's gonna happen, but then they go over that moment and it's like, oh, what?
Yeah, exactly.
It's completely
it's like a farce.
Yeah.
And then Anakin meets up with Emperor Palpatine. Emperor Palpatine goes like, "Oh, we have won today." You know, my sick Emperor Palpatine coming in clutch here again. And then Anakin kills him in like the slowest possible fashion. It's not like he tosses the lightsaber up. He like does a spin. He winks at the camera, and then he stabs him. And all the clone troopers, because people will type in the comments like, "Oh, the clone troopers, they knew they wouldn't. They knew they couldn't fuck with this guy. He's the new emperor," you know. But they just don't react, which I fucking love. They're like, oh, whatever.
It's like they're revealing like this kind of like the clone troopers actually have a extremely severe design flaw in that they do not give a shit if the emperor gets murdered in front of them.
Yeah,
it's that he forgot to execute Order 67. Don't have me get murdered in front of you.
It's even funnier to consider like, well, okay, is the implication here that because they don't like salute Anakin?
No.
So,
like, do they consider Anakin an ally or not?
Or maybe they just don't care. Maybe they're like, well, okay, now all clone troopers are free. Like,
like in a way, I think this is way better and funnier than the whole, bioship, no bioship debate about the clone troopers. Like, oh, was it only conditioning, or are they programmed mechanically to, and so on? The obvious real answer is conditioning. Bioships are lame, but it's way more funny to think that it was conditioning, but the conditioning didn't stick, and they're like, all of them are just hella LARPing, and they just, we'll kill the Jedi's, I guess, and then it's like, excellent, my clone troopers.
Yeah, exactly. And fucking going through the motion.
Yeah, they're just like, whatever, dude. It's I'm over it.
Yeah.
So, which one do you think is better between Apprentice of the Force and whatever that game was called?
Now that we've talked about them, I do feel like we should just, well, you know what? We'll read the reviews, and during the review, we'll think about it.
Yes, I'll do some thinking for once.
Yes, and maybe I'll start this time, so give me your phone. Thank you. Revenge of the Sith is a kind of funny game, because you get to hear the opiate-addicted, not Anakin voice actor. It's potentially a little fun to see alternate cuts of things that happen in Episode 3. Everything was in practice cock, however. The game control is giga sloppy, and it is impossible to do exactly what you want due to no lock-on and 300 trillion context-sensitive actions. I've forgotten that. Why are all Jedis clones? And why are all their voice lines, damn these clones?
I've forgotten about all the Jedis looking the same.
Yeah, it's very funny. Fuck everything. Geonosian insect clickers getting ape crushed was a bit funny. I can't remember exactly what that is. Red lightsabers are a scam. Mace Windu would have mangled Anakin, no fucking problem. Guaranteed 3 seconds. I'd forgotten that you fight Mace Windu as Anakin, which is like, that's LARP.
Yeah.
That's mega LARP. Black people rule. Fair. Absolutely. Mace Windu is a boss. But you don't have to be Mace Windu. But if you are, you are. The game can be completed quite quickly due to fairly short stages. Boss fights are garbage. Oh, I've forgotten a bit about this. Kyle, aka 2009 Black and White, gave the game a 6 out of 10.
Oh yeah.
We watched reviews.
Yeah, I watched some reviews of this game.
I'm citing the review of Kyle here. Good graphics, great storyline, there is violence in it.
Good job. I forgot to do any thinking. Now, for the review of Apprentice of the Force. Hard to say things about the graphics, because they are pretty ugly, but rotoscoped. Gameplay feels very bipolar in that the game is extremely simple, while at the same time you get some different abilities that feel like they would have been better at home in another game. For example, one where you do not go through a corridor full of enemies for 5 hours. All abilities are also horribly balanced against each other. Jump Slash is 60 times better than anything else you can do. Why can Luke dash at the speed of light in Mos Eisley? Or anywhere for that? Is this just exactly what I said?
Yeah.
Whatever. Absolutely terrible space segments and swoop bike and trench run and stuff like that. It never ended. It's still going on. It never ended. Death pits everywhere. The only fun was reading text in Warcraft 2 voice sometimes, but even that you got tired of. Luke is a psycho killer. Darth Vader had a good walk animation.
Oh yeah.
AT-ATs had way too many legs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we should have brought that up. That, like the AT-AT level in the Empire Strikes Back hit Star Wars movie starring Luke Skywalker, when he's gonna blow up the AT-AT, that's a level in the game where you just, run on Hoth's surface and there's giant AT-AT legs that you have to avoid. And this is implied to be like one AT-AT, but it has like 60 legs.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's insane.
Yeah.
Like you completely get taken
I think
out of
they
it.
come from both sides.
Yeah,
of the
so it's
screen
like,
as well.
is this like some Euclidean, AT-AT walking back and forth at the same time?
It's pretty clear to me that we're going to cut Apprentice of the Force.
Yeah.
And something you mentioned in the review that we didn't get to, but we also did mention before, is that the final section, I believe it's like the final section.
So you're talking about the trench run?
Yeah, the New Hope section ends with a trench run. And the trench run is a side scroller. It's like a fucking Gradius or whatever. Like you're flying like this, you can shoot. Sometimes obstacles show up, you have to dodge them, and they're instant death if you run into them.
Yeah.
And from behind, TIE fighters show up. And if they run into you, it's instant death.
Yes.
And they fire at you constantly. So you have to sort of like wait them out and try to get behind them, because you can move backwards and forwards. So you can blast them. And the problem with this section, except for the fact that it kind of sucks, is that it is literally like 25 minutes long.
Yes. Even with extremely heavy use of save states. This took like hours getting through this.
Well, the problem is we started playing it and we basically play the game without save states.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you assume that it's going to be like 5 minutes tops.
Yeah.
And so you kind of play it, and if you die, you start at the beginning no matter what.
Yes.
And it's really hard to gauge how long you've been playing
Yes,
it for
because
a while.
the screen just looks the same.
Yeah,
like it's like
identical.
this looping, trench run sprite that just loops over and over. You have no idea of how far into the level you are. So it was really, I don't know, very Lynchian.
Yeah, to be honest, that's like it might be the worst case of runtime padding I've seen in a game ever.
Which is funny because it's it's a Game Boy Advance game.
Yeah, and it also didn't need it. There's a million stages in the game.
Exactly. So it's so weird. It's like is a kid gonna be sitting there like, oh boy, I can't wait to crash the Millennium Falcon for the 5 billion trillionth time in the back of my mom's van.
Yeah. And so you play that, and then the next sort of vehicle section is the swoop bike, which is way less shit, but it's technically the same game. You can just destroy barriers sometimes.
I don't really remember the swoop bike.
Yeah, it's
part.
like that one is like 2 minutes instead of 25, which maybe it's like a glitch or something.
Overshadowed by the trench run for me. And
then the ending of the game is you're flying around in like a fucking asteroids ass screen, and there's 1 million TIE fighters that you gotta kill, which also is like you gotta kill like 30 of them.
Yeah. Oh, now I remember. Yeah, it was like this weird space.
Yeah, invaders. And they can go off screen because it's not. Yeah, it's like asteroids sort of. But imagine if you're in asteroids, you can move your guy and move the screen, and you moved at like light speed. So you have like a box that's like this big. Technically, that's the map, but your screen shows you like this size. And then you're moving, and you move so fast, so it's like if you just tap a direction, 8 TIE fighters are gonna be like, go past.
How are they gonna be?
And you have to kill all of them. And I remember that also took a long ass time, and was like the only parts where we save state, or you save stated, was that and the trench run.
Yeah, and impossible without save states.
Yeah, and it's so weird to have these like super disparate instances of really hard and long gameplay sections that come at the end of chapters of the game, and the game is something completely different. Like the game doesn't teach you to get better at that at all.
Yeah, like this isn't something that
all my skill. I've played the game for 40 hours.
Are you ready for the final challenge of Apprentice of the Force? This is what we've been working towards. It's like, no, this is what you dropped on me at the very end of the game for me to spend like 8 million hours on dying over and over. It's like, I don't know, it's like if you're playing something like, you're playing fucking Dark Souls, and then they give you a jetpack at the end and 2 guns and like, go get him, champ. It's like, huh? What? I'm a knight. Pretty, please explain the rules, and then they just kick you down. Whatever. I don't like it.
No. I think if this conversation has told me anything, I guess, is that I like Revenge of the Sith more now than I did when I played it, and I like Apprentice of the Force way less.
Yeah, but the Cantina theme is
it's fucking best.